Lauren Sanchez wasn't the first woman to attempt transforming a romantic connection with a billionaire into genuine influence. Throughout history, there have been numerous examples, from the mistresses of early 20th century industrial tycoons to the glamorous trophy wives of today's tech moguls, all seeking a foothold in circles of power. However, what sets Lauren apart is the way she approached it. Openly, deliberately, and with remarkable precision. Her strategic moves were so calculated and visible that they disrupted long-standing dynamics within the elite world of technology billionaires. In doing so, she not only redefined public perceptions of such relationships, but also challenged the traditional male-dominated frameworks through which power has typically been held and passed on in Silicon Valley. News fast. Lauren Sanchez's true misstep wasn't corruption or calculated manipulation. It was forgetting the invisible, unwritten rules that have quietly governed the uppermost circles of American power for generations. These aren't the kind of rules you'll find recorded in official documents or debated at corporate governance panels. They're not part of any MBA curriculum or business ethics textbook. Instead, they've been subtly transmitted through elite social circles, whispered as parental advice in private members-only clubs, and absorbed through quiet observation, a silent code understood instinctively by those born into privilege. By ignoring or misreading these long-standing informal norms, she disrupted the traditional flow of influence, and in doing so, unsettled a system that relies on discretion as much as dominance. A woman may be admired as a graceful companion beside a billionaire, a stunning presence at galas, a charming hostess at his lavish estates, or a thoughtful confidant behind closed doors. She might even influence him subtly, offering whispered advice in intimate moments, using emotional intelligence to help navigate complex dilemmas. But what she must never do, according to the unwritten rules, is assert equal standing in the public arena. Independent power, a sphere of influence existing outside of the man's approval, remains taboo. Lauren Sanchez knowingly shattered this rule. It wasn't naivete, it was a calculated move. She saw the old codes as relics of a fading era and believed she could rise beyond Bezos' shadow, not as his ornament, but as a force of her own.
Lauren Sanchez began constructing her own sphere of influence, leveraging Jeff Bezos' resources and social capital as the foundation for building something uniquely hers. This move was both groundbreaking and deeply unsettling to the traditional power structure. She wasn't content to simply exist in his shadow. Instead, she stepped into the spotlight, not merely as Bezos' girlfriend or even his fiancée, but as a public figure in her own right. She launched independent ventures, promoted philanthropic causes, voiced her own political beliefs, and pursued business ambitions separate from his. In doing so, she crossed an invisible but firmly enforced boundary, one drawn by a system that tolerates women beside powerful men, but rarely welcomes them as autonomous players on the same stage.
For those familiar with the inner workings of power, the reaction to Lauren Sanchez's rise was entirely predictable, though it remained largely invisible to the casual observer. Initially, the elite tolerated her presence with a mix of polite skepticism and quiet resentment. Her actions were monitored, but not yet resisted. The extravagant $5 million wedding was permitted. After all, such displays were still within the accepted norms for a billionaire's spouse. Though the event's scale and intense media attention raised some eyebrows, it didn't yet cross the line. Her appearances on glossy magazine covers were likewise allowed, expected even for someone of her social rank. On the surface, everything seemed acceptable, but beneath it, unease was already beginning to simmer.
To an untrained eye, the distinction may seem subtle, almost insignificant, but within elite power circles, it's absolutely critical. The situation began to escalate rapidly once insiders recognized that Lauren Sanchez wasn't simply building a personal brand or running a philanthropic initiative designed to enhance her partner's public image. Instead, she was quietly assembling a genuine autonomous empire of influence. She developed independent funding streams, cultivated deep relationships across Hollywood and Washington, and established her own communication channels capable of shaping media narratives and even political discourse. Most notably, she employed a dedicated team of professionals who worked exclusively for her, not for Bezos, not as part of his apparatus, but solely in service of her growing vision and authority.
Lauren Sanchez wasn't merely leveraging her relationship with Jeff Bezos as a symbol of status or as a glamorous accessory, a role that would have been tolerated, even encouraged within elite circles. Instead, she was strategically using that connection as a launch pad to construct a parallel power structure, one capable of operating entirely outside Bezos's influence or approval. This was viewed as a serious disruption, not just within the tech world, but across the broader landscape of American corporate power. In hindsight, the unfolding scandal reveals an uncanny level of timing and coordination that casts doubt on the official narrative, which credits law enforcement's vigilance for the exposure of wrongdoing. The precision, the overlap between institutions, the flawless execution, all point to something far more orchestrated.
It was remarkably suspicious how swiftly so-called independent sources emerged from within Black Ops Aviation, seemingly ready and eager to testify against their former boss. This was a company that had operated for years without attracting any major complaints, and yet, almost overnight, it appeared riddled with dissatisfied employees bearing detailed allegations of financial misconduct. Equally odd was the sudden influx of anonymous complaints from individuals across unrelated sectors who, despite allegedly having no connection or coordination, managed to present statements that fit together seamlessly, like pieces of a carefully constructed puzzle. Their accounts painted a vivid image of widespread systemic violations. Even more telling was the near-perfect synchronization with which multiple federal agencies launched investigations, as if responding to a common signal rather than independent findings. The involvement of agencies like the FBI, the Securities and Exchange Commission, and the Department of Justice raised even more questions. These institutions are notorious for their slow bureaucratic processes, particularly when dealing with figures from the upper ranks of the business elite. And yet, in Lauren Sanchez's case, the entire federal apparatus seemed to spring into action with the precision and urgency of a Swiss watch. This didn't resemble the natural unfolding of events surrounding a crime accidentally uncovered by vigilant citizens or law enforcement. Instead, it bore all the hallmarks of a meticulously coordinated campaign aimed at discrediting and eliminating a disruptive figure from the existing power structure. The real question is, who stood to benefit? Clearly, it wasn't just a few minor players upset over routine business disputes.
Far more invested in Lauren Sanchez's downfall were the powerful figures who viewed her as a direct threat to the delicate balance of the established order, a threat to their own influence within the intricate hierarchy of power stretching from Silicon Valley to the halls of Congress. Amazon is far more than just a tech company or a corporate titan. It functions as a vast, interconnected ecosystem. It employs tens of thousands worldwide, works with countless suppliers and contractors, relies on hundreds of investors and creditors, and employs a legion of political lobbyists and strategic consultants. Jeff Bezos himself is not merely a wealthy individual with an enormous fortune. He is a central pillar in a sprawling network of economic, political, and social power that extends far beyond the business world.
Jeff Bezos stands at the heart of an extensive web of economic, political, and social interests spanning from Silicon Valley to Washington, from Wall Street to Hollywood, and reaching into university campuses and the newsrooms of the world's most powerful media outlets. Around every such center of power, a highly intricate system of interdependencies takes shape, built on informal agreements, mutual obligations, and unspoken expectations. The careers and livelihoods of thousands, if not tens of thousands of individuals, rely heavily on the stability and predictability of decisions made by influential figures like Bezos. Disrupting this delicate balance threatens not just one man, but the entire network that depends on a steady, controlled flow of power and influence.
Billions of dollars in investments hinge on Jeff Bezos' reputation and his ability to maintain control over his sprawling corporate empire. Into this intricately balanced and finely tuned system, carefully developed over decades, steps a woman who begins to wield influence over these vast financial interests through her intimate personal relationship with the system's key figure. But she didn't just offer quiet counsel behind closed doors. Lauren actively constructed her own independent network of power, leveraging the resources and opportunities afforded by her proximity to Bezos. This move was intolerable to everyone involved in the game, as it threatened to unravel years of painstaking relationship building and carefully maintained influence within the elite circles. The years of trust these powerful players had invested, along with their carefully crafted strategic plans, risked being upended by the unpredictable actions of a woman who owed no formal allegiance to the established system and was beyond its usual controls. Joe Rogan's criticism of billionaire weddings on his podcast wasn't a random outburst or spontaneous opinion. His selection as the public voice attacking Lauren Sanchez was a calculated, strategic move orchestrated by the very forces aiming to bring her down. Utilizing Rogan's vast audience and influence, they aimed to sway public perception and undermine her credibility, making the campaign against her appear organic and widespread rather than a targeted power play. Joe Rogan fit the perfect profile for this role. He is influential enough that his opinions carry significant weight, yet his anti-establishment independent persona means his critiques aren't easily dismissed as part of an orchestrated campaign. His massive audience, comprising millions of men across different ages and social backgrounds, made him an ideal conduit for spreading the narrative of a manipulative woman exploiting a wealthy man. Rogan effectively became the mouthpiece for powerful interests who couldn't openly confront Lauren Sanchez without exposing their involvement and inviting suspicion of a coordinated effort. By using Rogan, these forces masked their campaign as organic criticism, shielding themselves from direct accountability while shaping public perception against her.
Joe Rogan's takedown of the $5 million wedding wasn't just the offhand commentary of a popular podcaster reacting to another case of billionaire accepts. It was a calculated information strike, timed and crafted to generate maximum media impact and shape public opinion. What's especially revealing is the shift in media tone that followed shortly after his remarks. The same outlets that had spent years portraying Lauren Sanchez as the ultimate dream woman, a perfect partner to a visionary genius, a muse to a billionaire, suddenly flipped the script. Within weeks, she was being cast as a manipulative figure, a scheming opportunist, a dangerous disruptor to serious business. The speed and synchronicity of this transformation suggests far more than a natural change in public sentiment.
Magazines that had recently featured Lauren Sanchez on their covers, praising her elegance, intelligence, and ambition, abruptly shifted tone. The very traits once celebrated were now reinterpreted as signs of cunning, inauthenticity, and calculated intent. Journalists and columnists who had once applauded her evolution from TV personality to entrepreneur and philanthropist began publishing critical analyses, framing her rise as the result of manipulation and strategic exploitation rather than merit or vision. The transformation in narrative was so rapid and uniform across major outlets that even seasoned media analysts took notice. It became a textbook example of a meticulously coordinated campaign designed to reshape public perception, a sophisticated effort to turn admiration into suspicion almost overnight.
Perhaps the most fascinating and tragic element of this entire saga is how silence was weaponized so effectively against Lauren Sanchez, and how she, perhaps unknowingly, walked straight into the trap. In today's hyper-connected, media-saturated world, the speed of response often outweighs the depth or quality of the reply.
silence isn't seen as grace or restraint. It's interpreted as weakness, guilt, or a lack of defense. When Lauren failed to respond swiftly and publicly to Joe Rogan's pointed criticism, her silence was seized upon by both the media and the public as confirmation. It was read as an implicit admission that she had something to hide, reinforcing every accusation and further accelerating the collapse of her carefully built public image.
Lauren's silence didn't just speak volumes, it became an argument in itself, used as further evidence against her character. But what if her refusal to respond publicly wasn't guilt or indecision, but caution? What if she was simply following the advice of seasoned lawyers and PR strategists who understood the risks of speaking out during the early stages of a federal investigation? In such high-stakes circumstances, even a measured public defense could be twisted by prosecutors as an attempt to sway public opinion or influence potential jurors. She may have been warned that even the most benign efforts to clear her name could be framed as obstruction of justice or tampering with evidence, making silence not a choice, but a legal necessity. In the American legal system, the right to remain silent is a fundamental principle, and in theory, a suspect's silence cannot be used as evidence of guilt. But that protection ends at the courtroom door. In the realm of public opinion and media scrutiny, silence is almost always interpreted as an implicit confession. Lauren Sanchez's silence may not have signaled guilt or surrender, but rather a deep understanding, shared by her legal team, that the game unfolding around her was governed by rules she didn't control. In such a climate, any public statement, no matter how innocent or carefully worded, risked being twisted into further ammunition, used against her both in courtrooms and across headlines. One of the most painful and telling elements of Lauren Sanchez's downfall was the astonishing speed and cold precision with which her social and professional circle abandoned her. This wasn't a slow erosion of support as allegations unfolded. It was a near instantaneous, coordinated act of social amputation. Practically overnight, people who had just days earlier praised her as a visionary, a trailblazer, and a modern icon of female success began to distance themselves publicly. Some went so far as to openly condemn her, while others opted for a quieter but more humiliating tactic, pretending they had never known her at all. The rapid shift revealed just how transactional and fragile loyalty can be in the highest echelons of influence and power.
Hollywood producers, who, just a month earlier, were proudly touting their collaborations with Lauren Sanchez, fighting over her aerial filming services and framing their partnerships as badges of prestige, suddenly changed their tune. Almost overnight, they began recalling supposed issues, complaints about her professionalism, accusations of overcharging, and claims that the quality of her work had never truly met expectations. Meanwhile, socialites who had once welcomed her into the most exclusive circles, inviting her to elite charity galas and private gatherings, started feeding the press with stories. They spoke of bizarre behavior, unreasonable demands, and unsettling conversations she allegedly had at these events. One by one, former allies rebranded themselves as distant observers, eager to rewrite the narrative before it implicated them.
Charitable organizations that had once enthusiastically accepted Lauren Sanchez's multi-million-dollar donations and eagerly leveraged her public image to attract additional high-profile donors began erasing her presence with stunning speed. Mentions of her vanished from websites, brochures, and annual reports, as if her generosity had never existed. This abrupt disappearance had little to do with principles or moral outrage over her alleged misconduct. Rather, it revealed something far more telling: a deep, reflexive fear. These institutions understood the danger of being even indirectly associated with someone targeted by the system. They acted not out of conviction, but self-preservation, sensing instinctively what Lauren herself may have realized too late, that once you're marked as a threat, proximity alone can become a liability. In elite circles, where reputation serves as both currency and collateral for all future influence, no one is willing to jeopardize their standing by defending someone the system has already labeled as toxic and expendable. Once the signal is given, self-preservation takes priority over loyalty. Yet the most enigmatic, polarizing, and widely debated figure in this entire saga remains Jeff Bezos himself. His absolute public silence during the unfolding scandal, his swift and surgical distancing from Lauren Sanchez, and the total absence of any support, clarification, or even neutral acknowledgement raise serious questions. His behavior can be interpreted in at least 3 entirely different ways, each offering a drastically different lens through which to understand the scandal, the motives behind it, and who truly bears responsibility. The first and most benign interpretation of Jeff Bezos' silence is rooted in personal betrayal. According to this view, he was entirely unaware of the full-scale intent and methods behind Lauren Sanchez's growing sphere of influence. He trusted her fully as a beloved partner and future wife, and was blindsided by revelations uncovered during the federal investigation. In this scenario, his silence reflects deep emotional pain and shock. The swift distancing is not calculated, but the instinctive reaction of a man who realizes he was used by someone he loved. The second, far more cynical interpretation suggests Bezos was never in the dark. He was aware of Lauren's activities and may have even supported or encouraged them, so long as they didn't pose a direct threat to his own power, image, or control.
The third scenario takes a darker, more conspiratorial turn. In this version, Bezos didn't just remain passive. He may have been the architect or an active participant in the plan to remove Lauren Sanchez. Perhaps he came to see her as too powerful, too independent, and too knowledgeable, holding compromising information that could threaten his vast business empire and personal reputation. When her influence began to grow beyond acceptable limits, he allegedly chose to orchestrate her downfall to safeguard his own interests. This cold, calculated approach portrays Bezos as a master strategist, willing to sacrifice even intimate relationships to maintain control and protect his empire. Such a theory, while unsettling, fits within the shadowy dynamics often whispered about at the highest levels of power.
In this scenario, the entire sequence of investigation, trial, and imprisonment appears as a carefully orchestrated, multi-stage operation designed to eliminate an unwanted and potentially dangerous partner. The rapid and thorough way Amazon and Blue Origin erased all traces of Lauren Sanchez's involvement in corporate projects, removing her name from official documents, websites, and marketing materials, suggests a pre-planned, well-rehearsed crisis management strategy. This was not a chaotic or impulsive response to unforeseen events, but rather the precise execution of a detailed corporate contingency plan. Such professionalism points to an organization prepared for emergencies of this nature, capable of swiftly containing threats and safeguarding its reputation and leadership at all costs. Perhaps Lauren's true and unforgivable mistake wasn't stealing money, manipulating others, or breaking laws in the conventional sense. Instead, it was the bold and public way she showed the world that a clever, ambitious, and strategically minded woman could leverage intimacy with a powerful figure to carve out genuine, independent influence within the highest tiers of American society. By openly challenging long-standing, unwritten rules that have governed elite power dynamics for centuries, she exposed vulnerabilities in a system designed to keep such influence firmly controlled. Her actions threatened the traditional balance, demonstrating that power could be acquired through unconventional means, a revelation that many in the established order found deeply threatening and unacceptable. How many other ambitious, intelligent women might be inspired to follow Lauren's path? How many traditional power structures, long rooted in patriarchal control, would suddenly find themselves facing serious threats to their authority? The system responded to this existential challenge in the way it always does when its stability and legitimacy are at risk: swiftly, ruthlessly, and with precise coordination. The reaction was not only to neutralize the immediate threat, but to send a clear, unmistakable message to anyone else who might consider similar attempts. This demonstration of power was designed to discourage any future efforts to upend the established order, reinforcing the boundaries that keep power firmly in the hands of those who have held it for generations.
In a society that officially champions gender equality and actively promotes justice and equal opportunities, Lauren Sanchez's story serves as a stark and sobering reminder of the powerful, deeply entrenched, and unwritten boundaries that still govern the highest levels of power. It reveals how the system vigilantly guards these invisible lines against any serious challenges or breaches. While a woman in 21st century America can certainly achieve remarkable success through talent, hard work, and professionalism, becoming a Fortune 500 CEO, a senator or congressperson, a federal judge, or even vice president, there remain invisible limits on how far independent female influence can extend, especially when it threatens established power structures rooted in tradition and control. However, when a woman attempts to wield her sexuality, femininity, intimacy, and emotional connections as deliberate tools of power within the highest ranks of economic and political elites, the system responds swiftly, decisively, and with brutal coordination. Lauren's sentence, 16 years in federal prison without the possibility of early release, was not merely a legal judgment for the specific crimes proven against her. It was a symbolic punishment, sending a powerful cultural and social warning to other ambitious women. Do not follow this path. Do not try to leverage what defines your womanhood to claim power that has traditionally and legally been reserved for men. This sentence serves as a stark deterrent, reinforcing deeply entrenched boundaries that govern who can wield influence and how. Years from now, once the immediate passions surrounding Lauren Sanchez's story have cooled, archives have been declassified, and key players have either moved on or lost interest in keeping their secrets, her story will likely be revisited by historians, sociologists, and scholars of power. Rather than being remembered as a cautionary tale against ambitious women, it may come to be seen as a tragic example of how America's most powerful institutions act in ruthless, coordinated ways to defend themselves against anyone who poses a genuine systemic threat. Her fate could serve as a profound case study of the lengths to which entrenched power structures will go to preserve their dominance and suppress challenges to their authority. Perhaps future generations will come to view Lauren Sanchez's fate not merely as the story of a criminal facing deserved punishment, but rather as the tale of a woman who was too intelligent, too ambitious, and too threatening to a system rigidly dedicated to preserving the status quo at any cost. Her story may ultimately be seen as a reflection of the struggles faced by those who dared to challenge deeply entrenched power structures.